Welcome back to Uncontested Investing, and thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Nate Zielinski, joined by co-host Suzanne Andreessen. Today we're going to wrap up our property types and niches discussion. We've had so many great topics. We kicked it off with a great guest in Richard Ross, and today we're going to speak to you about land development and put a bow on the topic in general. Suzanne, where do you want to start with land development?
Well, certainly, coming off of Richard's conversation with us, it's the first step in developing a community.
Yep.
And probably the most important piece of that is selecting the parcel. What's it near? What are you trying to do with it? How big do you want it to be? What type of project do you want it to be? Is it going to be townhouse, single family? What is it going to look like? And then look at, what are you trying to gain out of it?
Yeah. The plan for the investor is the most important part. When you're talking about raw land development, there's probably countless investors out there, too many to name, that are just sitting on a parcel of land and they're not quite sure what to do with it, kind of draining their portfolio to some extent. So having that plan of action is super important for investors to consider if they're going to go that land development route. The one good thing, though, is there's less competition. A lot of investors are on that path of fix and flip, 30-year long-term rentals, even ground-up construction in a neighborhood where sometimes acquiring the land isn't even a part of the process. So there's a lot less competition, and that means investors are in a unique position where they can negotiate deals and get the best possible price for the land to kick off the project.
Well, and so it's understanding the process on what to do with it next. You have to figure out how many units. What is the zoning requirements?
Yep.
Is it 2-3 acre? What does that town require? And then as soon as that's a piece of it, but even laying out the parcel, and making sure that all the pieces that you're putting into it, how are you going to design it? And there's, all kinds of ordinances that you have to follow in each and every town. The road construction, which is probably the most expensive piece that you're putting into that.
Yep.
Making sure it meets the specs required by the town as well as all the other infrastructure that goes into that.
Yep.
And then, laying out the parcel, making sure that all the setbacks are allocated before you even start putting any of the structures on it. So it's a significant piece of the equation, but one that can potentially provide the largest return on investment.
Yes, it's definitely one of the longer term plays that we have in the investment space, not for the faint of heart, but if you're going about it the right way, it can change your life forever. If you get a land development project right, you're setting yourself up for years and years of success. And it's for the creative investor as well, right? You have a blank canvas, so you get to decide what goes on the land. I would suggest that investors do a little bit of research, a little bit of homework about the existing areas surrounding the land, because you can't just do whatever you want. There has to be some sort of plan involved of like, okay, what does this community need? What can I bring to it? What can I add to it? And from within that scope of work, you can be very creative with how you design and bring it to life. But there does need to be a set plan in place of like, I know what this community needs and I'm going to bring that value, because then you hit the ground running. Once you develop the property, now you have tenants or clients or residents, whatever direction you decide to go, you can hit the ground running because you did that work to begin with.
And what are you going to do with it? Are you laying it out? Probably the hardest piece of that is really laying out the parcel and doing and getting it ready to build. And from there, is that where you want to stop, or do you want to build the assets yourself? Are you going to build them for someone and sell it? So what is your next step?
Yeah.
Are you going to self-manage? Are you going to build it and sell it as a portfolio to an operator? So those are the things you want to do, or do you want to partner with an operator and to say, okay, are you a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot housing? What is your build box? Or we talked about a buy box. What's your build box?
Yeah.
And how can we help you get there? So these are the pieces that you want to figure out. And know going into that you can. And there's it's a long runway to get to the end. But if you complete it, it's also very rewarding, both financially and personally.
I think for investors, this is important to consider. This is unlike any project that they may have taken on in their career. So it's very important to lean on network connections, your peers, people that may have experience going down this road, no pun intended. But I think it's super important to not do this by yourself, right? This brings in the opportunity to partner with people such as a builder, an architect, a civil engineer, as you mentioned, the regulations, the zoning, All the litigation that you probably have to go through with the town will cause your head to spin. If you have a civil engineer in your back pocket that's working with you, that's a partner on this investment property, that battle and those conversations are taken off your plate and you can focus your energy elsewhere.
And what are the amenities that you want to include in it? You may decide that you want to bury the utilities. So I mean, there's that, and that comes. There's you got to really figure out what is it that you're trying to present it as the finished product. And certainly, build it. Burying the utilities is kind of nice. You don't see them going up to the house. Certainly, if you're in an area where it's wooded, they're not coming down if you have any windstorms. So, what are the things that you want to do to that parcel? And then, are you on public water or private water, public sewer? There's so many other pieces that you need to put into the equation. And I'm not saying it to scare you off.
Yep.
It's just making sure that you really look into your due diligence on the project. What are the things that you want to achieve? And who are the people that you can connect with, partner with to bring it to the end point?
Yep. And, sometimes I think going back to even the beginning of the equation, if you're looking at raw land, a lot of these people are inherited owners of this land. They're unmotivated sellers. So you can really tap into a specific market within the real estate industry. It doesn't just have to be that one area where you complete a project and you're done. You can really find these pockets across the country and really insert yourself as a leader in the investment community if you go about it the right way. If you have that plan in place, if you have the partners in place, this can really be transferable to any market in the country because of the people that are maybe previously owning this land and just wanting to get rid of it for a decent price. Investors can swoop in and repeat this project time and time again.
And sometimes, you mentioned, inheriting the land or an unmotivated seller. There's things that you can do to help motivate. Maybe say, okay, if you contribute the parcel to the project, we'll contribute back percentage
Exactly
to you.
Yeah.
That, or two lots for your kids with a house on it. Whatever, what is their goal? And how can you partner with them? There's a lot of things that can happen that, are you trying to create a revenue stream that will help them and their family retire path forward? There's a lot of things that you can incorporate into a strategic plan.
I think that's important to circle back because I started by talking about how there may be less competition because investors are going the more standard route with the fix and flip. The 30-year long-term rental, there's not going to be no competition, right? So you still have to find ways to be competitive, attract the sellers to give you or to get that parcel from them. And I think roping them in on the percentage is one of those ways where you can be a little bit more creative with how you finance or secure the land and then turning it into a long-term project.
Well, and they don't feel like they're walking away from their dream. Now you're helping them achieve their dream. And I think there's some things that you can do to make it attractive that everyone feels successful in the end.
Yeah, sometimes the people that have the land just need that kick in the butt, that spark of motivation, right? It's like, okay, somebody wants to come in and, take control of this property and turn it into something. Well, I can still help, right? I can still be somewhat invested in the land that I inherited from my family, or I really had no plan or, didn't have any direction of where to go with this. So if you're an investor coming in and you kind of infuse that motivation, obviously you want to make sure that if you're still going to be doing a lion's share of the work and bringing in the partners, that percentage is comparable to just getting the land from someone. But all those details are obviously figured out in real time in a case-by-case basis, but still extremely important to consider.
Well, and you don't want to be perceived at that as the big city carpetbagger.
Yeah.
You've got to come in as a friendly.
Meet them at their level.
Yep, absolutely. And it's important. Don't present it as a takeover. Present it as a partnership.
Yes. And if you can go into that conversation with a plan already, maybe some of those zoning things already figured out, maybe some drawings with an architect already constructed and say, I want you, it's different going to somebody's door and say, hey, I have a plan to do something with this land. As opposed to, hey, look at these drawings, look at these specs. This is what I want to do in 3 to 5 years. This is what we can turn this land into. Now they're like, okay, I like the sound of that. Let me get on board with that.
And you're matching their vision. You haven't stomped on it. You've matched it and helped to bring it to fruition.
Yes. So we're off to a great start discussing land development and all that it entails and goes into from an investor perspective. We're going to take our first break of the episode. We'll come back. We'll talk about some of the exit strategies that investors can employ and then what to watch out for. Obviously, there is some risk involved with developing raw land. So we want to make sure that you're prepared, and we will see you guys on the other side of the break.
See you soon. REI Inc. is the premier monthly publication for real estate investors.
Dive into a wealth of expert insight and strategies from industry leaders and gain valuable regional market insights, ensuring you always have the best information at your fingertips. Visit rei-ink.com to elevate your real estate investment game today.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Uncontested Investing. Suzanne and I are going to continue our discussion on developing raw land, how that can be a property type and a niche that investors can explore and see a significant return on. It's a big undertaking, but as we're going to discuss here, there are so many different exit strategies that an investor can employ to see that return on investment. I think the best place to start is the most simple one, and that's being entitled to the land and then flipping that land to a builder. So I'm not sure if there's many ways that an investor can come in and make upgrades to raw land and make it more enticing for a builder to come in and buy it. But certainly that's something worth looking into as an investor, right? If you're just securing the parcel, waiting for that opportune builder to come in the right time, maybe you have some connections that you can advertise or network and let people know that you have a parcel waiting to be scooped up by another bigger player. But that is certainly one of the easiest places to start for investors.
Well, and you're going to know if you're in some of the hot markets, Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh, there's going to be some key REITs that are in that market already. And if you perhaps beat them to the punch on a parcel of land, certainly securing that and then flipping it to them is probably the easiest way to make a quick return on that investment. Yeah, but certainly they're going to be out there trying to beat you to it. So but you have to buy it at the right price so you can turn around and flip it at a better price.
Yeah, you got to be crunching the numbers on that for that to work. I think another a little bit more nuanced strategy is subdivide the parcel of land and sell individual lots. So now you're taking this big piece of pie, or you're taking the whole pie, cutting it into pieces and selling it off one by one, whether that's to investors, whether that's to residential home buyers that want to build on this plot of land. You can kind of cut it up that way and make it a bunch of mini transactions. You're going to sell those individual plots of land and exceed your return on investment eventually. It's going to take a little bit longer, but if you're cutting up acres and acres of land and selling it off, you will see that return eventually.
But there's a lot that has to go into that before you sell that first parcel. You're going to have to go to every town and complete a subdivision plan. And in that, and all subdivision plans are going to require the infrastructure, and you have to create the bylaws and all of those things. And those actually traditionally have to be filed, I believe, and recorded at the county. So that everyone knows the rights that they are acquiring by participating in a subdivision. It's the most profitable way as you sell off the lots individually. It's time consuming, a lot of legwork and behind the scenes work, but the best way to make the most return on the asset.
Sure. And then taking it a step farther, you're building the home on those properties as the investor, right? You've subdivided the lots, you're building individual homes, spec homes, build to rent, things of that nature, even creating somewhat of a build to rent community, which we had a few recent guests talk to us about. But that is another very feasible option. You have to do your due diligence and your research, make sure the properties are up to par. You're going to be able to attract, at that point, it's going to be 15, 20, 30 different tenants. So you have to make sure the work that you're putting into building the property is something that's going to attract a lot of people, not just one person. It's different than just completing one simple ground up construction home. You're building a community, so that's got to attract a lot of people.
And I would suggest, communicating with a local realtor partner that you have. What is the predominant rental strategy? Is it a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath? What size lot is it? What are the amenities that people are typically looking for? Because you're trying to turn those individual transactions into the most profitable way, and you want to make sure that you're addressing the lion's share of interest out in the community that are looking to rent the parcels.
Yep, that's super important if you're a national investor and you're going into different communities, markets, cities, suburbs, whatever the case may be, and you want to invest at a widespread level. You have to be tapped into what each market prefers when it comes to amenities, right? Hotter areas, are you going to add swimming pools? Areas with families, are you going to add pet amenities? So there's so many different things. It's not going to work across the country the same way, rinse and repeat, right? You have to really dial in at a local level, figure out what these communities want and need, and then implement that into the homes that you're building.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with a little espionage, and looking at some projects that are ongoing, where you'll find one of them, the predominant REITs in the area. What are they building?
Yep.
And, there's, and match it. And maybe they'll buy it from you. Who knows? But at least match what they're doing, and create a similar environment. And that'll probably provide the biggest return on investment.
We've touched on a couple of these throughout the episode, but there are some risks involved that investors should know about when you're talking about developing raw land. I think the entitlements, the zoning, the permits, which you've mentioned, those can lead to a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of headaches, could immensely delay or even kill some of these projects before they even get started. You decide to buy a parcel of raw land and then realize that due to zoning regulations, you actually can't build residential properties on this land or commercial properties. Whatever your plan was, you no longer can do it. So there needs to be a lot of research that goes into it ahead of time. And that's a major risk that investors need to be prepared for.
Well, and if you bought this, we'll say 100-acre parcel, and you say, oh, okay, I can put 42 homes on it. And all of a sudden you realize that based upon the layout and zoning requirements, you can only do 34. Well, does that project now work?
Yes.
So there, you have to really understand, and every town has its own, and they're allowed to have their own ordinance and rules and their own code enforcement. And what are the things that you have to follow? And you need to really understand it before you acquire the parcel to begin with.
Another step of that process, we've been talking about having a vision, having a plan, knowing the end goal for the land that you're developing on. But in between that, there's a lot of infrastructure costs that go on, right? So now you need to hire a crew to build on that land. There's going to be utilities, maybe paving roads, which you mentioned, site preparation. So those are all costs that need to be factored in. Everybody wants to, get to the end of the road and have that 30-home community that's just going to print money for them, but it's a long journey to that. There's going to be setbacks along the way. I would venture to guess there's not many picture perfect projects that have gone from developing raw land to 30-unit homes without any difficulties or setbacks. So be prepared, know that they're going to happen, prepare for them financially as well as mentally, because that's the only way you're going to be able to succeed.
Well, and what are your holding costs? What is your monthly, once you get things going, what do you have to pay back to your investor? What's that time frame? What's the escalation? What's your current cost to carry? What's your future cost to carry? And when do you have to really start selling the first completed asset to really stay within the timeline? Because you don't want to put this effort in there and fall short.
And then region of the country, is the land suitable to build on, right? Are you in a flood zone? Is there slope that you have to worry about? Yes, a beautiful land development in, states such as Florida or California are always going to be super appealing. But what if an earthquake comes and knocks out an entire community that you just dedicated 3 to 5 years of your life building? What if a hurricane comes through? What if a tornado in the Midwest? So you're really going to need to do that risk analysis on a long-term scale. Obviously, insurance is in place for a reason, and you always want to secure yourself against worst-case scenario. But that is something, if you're going to invest a lot of time and money, think about the worst case scenario, and is it really worth it for you if tomorrow that community just ceased to exist because a hurricane leveled all the housing?
But let's talk about what happened with the fires out in California.
Fires is another good one.
So and we are going to see building, and they're trying to change it right now. They're trying, and then are the people grandfathered in that lost their houses? But there's going to be new building constraints. That do you have to go to a stucco house? Do you have to go to a metal roof? What do you have to do to meet? And the building, what you have approved today could be very different tomorrow, or only half of the assets that you already started meet the current bylaw boundaries, and you have to turn around and go to the new ordinances set forth that require a safer build based upon fire or flood or whatever the thing. Do you understand the setbacks from a pond? Do you have, there's so many things that you have to follow. Right now in Maine, the setback from water is 75 feet, but I hear the DEP is going to take it to 100. So what have you prepared for it? What happens if you've got a water in your parcel? What do you have to do to make sure that you meet all the requirements and still get the end result?
Have we scared you off of it yet?
But there's a lot of money in it.
No, in all seriousness, it's an extremely viable option for investors. Taking our recommendations such as doing your homework and due diligence, partnering with the right types of people that can really push that project forward, and preparing for any mistake or delay that might come up. And you're really going to set yourself up for success and be able to reap the benefits for decades to come. Extremely lucrative option, but you got to be well prepared.
And we talked about some, unique amenities, burying the utilities so you don't see the power lines coming to the house. There's a lot of things that you can do to take your project above what you see out in the community. So there's things that you can do to enhance what you're trying to build and make it more attractive. So there's things. The upside, there is upside and positive opportunity here as well.
Awesome. As always, Suzanne, thank you for the conversation and your expertise. To our listeners, we hope this was a great discussion regarding land development, all the bonuses and pros that are out there with some of these projects, but keeping in mind what can set you back and what can deter you from doing this. So with that in mind, be ready to take on your next project. Suzanne and I will see you in the next episode for Uncontested Investing. We will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for joining us.
See you soon. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Uncontested Investing. Questions about today's episode or the podcast? Email podcast@rcncapital.com and make sure to follow REI Inc. magazine on LinkedIn and Facebook and RCN Capital on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you all next time.